The transformation you've had over the last few years has been remarkable. And the reason we have him on the mindset side is because he was always a smart, intelligent human being, but just with a set of beliefs about how this business was.
Yes, he was one of the first people I coached. This was before Zoom. It was just a phone call. It was like everybody dialed in. Nobody could see each other. No one had the belief result feedback loop. No one had any additional content for me. I just got on the phone and coached him live. And I remember you telling me, because there was about a year that went by before you actually engaged in the mindset part of the program. Would you like to share with everyone what you thought about the mindset in the beginning? Because I know what it was.
Yeah, I'll keep it fairly short and brief, Francis. I know we had a really long conversation about it. I'll never forget our first phone call, because I was actually sat in my car outside the house because it was the only quiet place I could find. I've got 2 young kids, and it was the only quiet place I could find. And honestly, I wasn't on board with the mindset thing at all. I didn't understand how, with respect, somebody that didn't come from a traditional recruitment background like Francis could in any way get inside my head or talk to me about what it was like to be a recruiter and woe is me. And to be frank, the first call I had with you, Francis, I was going, if I don't ever speak to that lady again, it's not going to overly bother me, because it just wasn't, there was no connection there. I didn't feel like there was any synergy or any connection there in terms of what you were talking about. And frankly, none of what you said made any sense to me. Respectively, now, when I look back in it, I can see there were so many untrue beliefs and untruths in my head that I just wasn't ready for, frankly, what you were selling. And I always say to Mike, for me, with the RecruiterU program, mindset is a little bit like Chinese water torture. You get a little drip effect, and eventually the drip becomes a deluge. And eventually we get to a point where we're at now, where I honestly could not imagine conducting my business on a day-to-day basis without having the benefit and support of having Francis in my background and essentially having the tools and techniques that you offer in my back pocket. I suppose one of the best examples I can give you guys from a mindset perspective of how my mindset has adjusted in the last 4 years. To understand where I'm at right now, you have to understand where I was at then. So I remember traveling to Slough to go to the conference with Mike and with a couple of the guys. Dion was there. And I can remember at the time, my attitude was, and my belief was, I had this, what I now understand to be, Francis, a poverty mindset. I could not see how my business was going to make any money. I don't think I've ever shared this with you guys, but I can remember when I landed in Slough, I had €2,000 left in my bank account. And I remember thinking, can I actually afford to be here? And I remember being under pressure at the meeting thinking, God, this is going to cost me X, this is going to cost me X. And then 48 hours after the conference, my mindset had changed to the point where I was actually asking myself, how could I afford not to have been there? Because I went into that conference thinking, I don't really know if this is for me. I actually didn't feel when I was there, I belonged there, because when I compared myself to everyone else who was there, I felt like I was a fraud. And then 48 hours later, I can only describe that conference, for me, was like a religious experience. I literally, that first night in the hotel, was levitating off the bed, jumping with ideas. And I left there 48 hours later, and I had an abundance of ideas. So my mindset had shifted from one of poverty mentality to one of, actually, there's loads of opportunities out there for me, and there's loads of opportunities for me to make money, and there's loads of possibilities for me to make a success of this. And the best thing I can say about leaving that conference was that there was an abundance of ideas and techniques that I could put into immediate practice and implement immediately on my desk. So much so that, talk about a shift in mindset. Like, I remember Mike in the conference saying getting upfront deposits and retainers is totally feasible for anybody in this business. And I can remember distinctly sitting at the front of the room and shaking my head and going, not for me, my niche is insurance, and nobody in insurance in Dublin will pay me an upfront deposit. That was my mindset. And within 6 weeks, I emailed Mike to tell him I sold my first retainer. And I've been in the business at that point for 18 years. Never sold a retainer, never got an upfront deposit for anything. It was 100% non-exclusive contingency. And within 6 weeks, I remember emailing Mike to tell him with great pride that I'd sold my first retainer worth €60,000. Now, €60,000, put in context, was more than I'd ever billed before as a solo. I never believed that getting retainers was possible in my niche. And then suddenly, here's this guy from America that comes along and says, actually, if you change things a small bit, but more importantly, if you change the way you think about it, retainers is actually totally tenable. Yeah, I think that was huge for me. The other thing I would say that mindset has done for me has really helped with consistency. So one of the biggest issues I had was I was on what Mike always talks about, that roller coaster revenue. I'd have peaks and troughs. I'd have months where I would not bill at all. And then there'd be a sudden surge of billing. And then that would sustain me for a couple of months. And then I'd take a holiday from my desk. And then there'd be another couple of months of no billing. And so you had this roller coaster effect. And I think one of the biggest impacts I've had from working with Francis and with Mike has been that evening out of our consistency of billing in terms of performance. And it goes back to metrics, which I'll talk about in a second. But I remember I wasn't entirely sure or convinced that I'd even benefit from having a mindset coach. And like I said earlier, now I'm at the point where I'm thinking, how could I not have thought that I would benefit from it? Because it's just brought so much value into the way I think about the business, the way I think about things that happen in the business. Francis may have talked a little bit about how we can all, as individual recruiters, get triggered by things that will have happened on a daily basis. And I'll be honest, I never particularly reacted positively to a lot of the things that would happen. And now I can see from a mindset point of view how judgmental I was of myself and my performance. Like nothing I ever did in the business was good enough. One of the things that I've learned from working with the guys is not to beat myself up so much about the business, because so much of what we do, if we do it in a certain way, is predictive. I don't know if Mike, you want to jump in on anything there at that point. Is there anything you want to focus on?
You've said a lot. And one, I love the theme, just so people can hear it, is when they change the way they think. The one thing you didn't say that you've told me when we were in Boston together, you're 100% retained now.
Absolutely, yeah. I say no to so much stuff now that frankly, it scares me. I could never have envisaged saying no to some of the contingency offerings that I was taking as for granted for the last, God knows, 18, 20 years. And now I'm 100% retained or engaged. I don't work contingency anymore for anybody. I may have some legacy clients that occasionally will ask me as a favor, but more often than not, I'll convert them to an engaged search methodology. If you want to take about a shift in my mindset, I couldn't have possibly envisaged, never mind 4 years ago, even 2 years ago, that I'd be at the point where I could talk with any degree of confidence about having a business that was 100% retained or engaged. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm a solo operator. I've got 2 researchers that work with me, so I'm a team of 3. But I suppose the best way I can put it in context really is in terms of billings. And my billings last year alone were 10x what I did the year before. And I didn't work any harder. I didn't work any smarter. All I did was change my approach and my attitude towards what was possible from a retainer and engaged search perspective. So I still talk to the same clients. I still speak to the guys that were giving me contingency work, but I respectfully pass on a lot of it now. And I'm now of the opinion, 2 years ago, if I passed and said no to something, I'd be worrying for about a month afterwards, where's the next job going to come from? And now I say no to it, and I know that by saying no, something better is coming down the tracks.
Because you know your metrics.
Correct, yeah.
This all ties together. That's why we have the Venn diagram where everything overlaps. All these things, mindset combined with metrics.
And I'm going to be honest, I hated, when Mike introduced metrics, I hated KPIs. I had been tortured by KPIs for years in other firms. And I hated the idea that, how dare this guy in Connecticut tell me that I should be holding myself accountable to this number of calls per day and this number of reach outs per week. And honestly hated the idea of metrics. And then I decided to make a conscious decision to avoid them when I went solo. So when I was set up on my own as a solo operator in 2014, I had no metrics. I had no way of measuring my business. I had no way of measuring how I was doing. I had no way of measuring where I was going. So really the surprise is, how did it take me so long to discover that I didn't know where my next fee was coming from? And really what I've come to realize under the RecruiterU is that it has demonstrated to me how utterly important and how utterly essential metrics are to growing your desk or your business. I'm a firm believer now in the idea of metrics and ratios. And I know exactly, specifically and precisely how many calls it's going to take me to generate one interview. I know exactly, specifically and precisely how many calls it's going to take, how many first-time interviews it's going to take to generate a fee. So the mystery of my desk is completely gone. And the beauty of metrics is that it allows you to track on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis how you're doing. And then you can adjust your behaviors and your performance to reflect where you want to go. For example, I know at the moment that to pick up one job order is going to take me probably an extra 20 calls. But by knowing that, I know I can invest more time in making those calls. Whereas historically, I wouldn't have known that, and I would have just been happy and grateful to accept whatever base level contingency offering came my way. Then I'd end up frustrated and annoyed that I was only filling 1 in 5 roles. I think it was probably less than that. Whereas now I'm filling 100% of whatever I take on.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I wish I had the ability when we were in Slough to say, you know what, in September 1st, 2023, here's where you're going to be. You would have said, no freaking way, Mike.
I just wouldn't have believed it. I honestly wouldn't have. And the thing about it is that for me, I go back to the metrics and to the figures. And for me, the proof of the pudding is in the results. Last year was phenomenal. I just 10x'd my performance from the year before. This year, I'm on track to exceed that. For a guy that had so much experience under my belt, I never would have believed it was possible for me to achieve the results I've achieved just by changing a couple of things and by taking on board some of the teachings that Mike and Francis and the team have offered. And it's been phenomenal. I think the final thing I would like to share is that for me, it's really important for me and for my business that the business is a self-driving business. And I remember telling Mike, probably the first time or second time we met, I remember sharing that I didn't really take holidays for the first 4 years that I set up the business, because whenever I did take a holiday with my family, I'd inevitably end up bringing my laptop with me, and I was working through the holiday. I was checking my emails. I was checking my voicemails. And with the help of the program, I realized, well, actually, I never envisaged having a team or never envisaged having anybody support me in the business, because I couldn't imagine how anyone else could do what I needed to do or what I had to do in inverted commas in order for me to be successful. And fast forward 4 years later, I now, as I say, have 2 researchers that work virtually with me. One's based in Romania right now, one's in the Philippines. And the best thing I can give you guys is I've taken 2 holidays this year. I took a week in Boston around the conference, and I've just come back from a trip to Hungary. And on both occasions, I didn't bring my laptop. I never checked my emails. I never needed to check in on my voicemails. And while I was away, Mike always used to say to me, if you want things to happen on your desk, take a holiday. I'm thinking, that's totally counterintuitive. Why would you walk away from your desk when you want things to happen? And all I can say is when I was in Boston this year, I made one of the biggest fees I've ever made. And I was away in Hungary last week, and I've just sent out invoices yesterday morning for 36K. It's just everything that I believed before this program was clearly the opposite of what was actually true. So I think if I was to leave you guys with one simple message, it's this: no matter what you believe about the business and about yourself and about your ability to achieve great things with this work, honestly, a lot of what you believe about yourself and the business may not actually be true. For me, the best thing about it is that since I've come to recognize that so much of what I previously believed was untrue, the results have improved.
That's amazing. I don't even have any way to summarize that, because I saw the pictures. You posted a bunch on Facebook on your trip, and I don't think you took your kids. Was that just you and your wife?
No, we decided to be selfish. We left our kids in Ireland.
Excellent, because they weren't in any of the pictures. So I saw your lovely wife.
No. It was wonderful, Mike. I think I told Francis, I rediscovered my wife. I discovered what an intelligent, wonderful woman she is again, without being interrupted.
Beautiful. Francis, anything? Gerard, thank you.
No problem. You're welcome.
I'm in total awe, and I'm so proud of you. Francis, anything to leave Gerard with?
The one thing I noticed, everything as you were talking today, the presentation for everyone here was on your body as an energy generating machine, ability to oscillate your energy, check your energy, and especially we talked about give, receive versus get, avoid energy. And so as you were talking, what I wanted to note for everyone here, essentially what Gerard was talking about was there's a sub-law under the law of give and receive, which is the law of sacrifice. It's the idea that when I give up something of a lower nature, it creates space for something of a higher nature to come in. And so often these limiting beliefs, like what Gerard was saying, like I would take a job that was a contingent job for how many years was it? 14 years, 18 years?
18 years, yeah.
And so it's this idea of when we are in scarcity, when you're in that distressed emotional state and scarcity in your body, you'll hold on to things that are of a lower nature. and it blocks the higher nature thing from coming in. And so your ability to shift and let go of those and have faith that the universe, God, will provide something of a higher nature. I would love to hear a little bit more about, if I'm able to share on how that feels in your body and those client relationships, like specifically how it shifted in your marketing, that trusted advisor, trusted client kind of shift that you experienced there.
Yeah, so I think the biggest change physically and mentally and emotionally for me was that I always felt like, why can't my clients adopt me? My clients love me. They should love me more. Why are they not loving me more? Why are they not giving me exclusive work to work on? And I now look back on it and I say, well, you deserve the clients you created for yourself. And the relationships that I had with my clients prior to the program would have been one of transactional. I picked up the phone. I might get lucky. Maybe I catch the client on a day where they actually pick up the phone and they actually have a job offer or a job opening. And it was your classic recruiter saying, what have you got? What do you need me to work on? So now that conversation has shifted to one where there's a mutual respect. And my clients trust me as more of an advisor. I'm here for their benefit. I think one of the most empowering things I learned recently was the fact that the mindset needs to shift from one of, I need them, to one of, actually, no, I don't need them. Those clients need me more than I need them. So it's more about, when I pick up the phone out to a client, it's about finding what their pain points are, identifying where the business is going, identifying from a strategic perspective, how can I help them to achieve their strategic goals? Those are conversations, frankly, that when you're in a contingency relationship, you never even dream of having with a client, because in that situation, it's a race past the post. And when you're in a race situation, you don't have time to be stopping to smell the roses and find out what's the strategic output here, what's the goal of the company, and how much in alignment you are. From a physical perspective, I can say I'm a lot more relaxed. There's no distress in my voice now when I'm talking to clients. I don't feel under pressure. Like, I'll give you a great example, Francis. I had a great call earlier today. So this is classic. This could only have happened to me. So I sent out an invoice, as I mentioned, on Monday for, I think it was like 36K for 2 clients. And then I noticed Stella alert on my phone yesterday to say that money had been paid into my bank account. And I checked my account and go, oh, that's an odd amount. And I rang the client up to have a conversation, and I said, I just noticed that a figure came into my account. I said, for €5,000. I said, I'm just curious. I said, what's that about? And because it didn't tally or it didn't reconcile with the invoices I'd sent out. And she was like, oh, I don't know. She said, let me get the finance director to ring you. So the finance director rings me this morning and she goes, yeah, she said, we got your invoice. And she said, we just want to make sure that we have everything in order. So we said, we pay 5,000 up front now and we'll pay the balance next week. I'm thinking, no problem. I said, look, whenever you want to send money my way, I'm happy to accept it. And we had a bit of a laugh and a joke relationship about it, or to chat about it. But the point I'm making is that type of conversation just wouldn't have been possible a year ago. Because a year ago, I would have been looking at it going, that's not the amount I sent out. That's not the invoice I sent out. That doesn't correlate. And in my head, I would have been catastrophizing that conversation. Whereas now, physically, I could relax and go, you know what? It's okay. It's okay. I've had the conversation with a client. It's actually a genuine effort on their part to ensure that they're meeting and honoring their commitments as I've done to them. And yeah, I think that's important to mention as well, that one of this pieces of mind that I've got from a mindset perspective has been mutual accountability between myself and my clients. So now when I take on an engaged search with a client, I'm actually holding them accountable for certain outputs during that relationship. So it's no longer a case of, I'll take on this job order and I'll send a number of CVs and we'll see what happens. Now there's got to be a response within 24 to 48 hours max. And what that does is it shifts the nature of the relationship completely to one of where you're subservient to your clients to one where there's a mutual respect. And you can stand up for yourself a little bit. And honestly, it took me an awful long time to develop the confidence to be able to have that type of relationship with my clients. So I would say physically and emotionally for me, it's no distress, no stress, certainty about your billings, certainty about where your next holiday is going to be. And the most reassuring thing is I know when I wake up in the morning, I'm looking forward to the day ahead.
Thank you so much. It's just an honor. It's just humbling. Thank you for sharing all of that with everyone.
No problem. You're very welcome. And thank you for everything you've done as well.
Thank you. Thank you for taking your time out for
No
you
problem.
in the afternoon, early evening. So I'm going to let you get back to your family. Thanks so much, my friend. We'll chat soon.
Best wishes, guys. Thanks a lot.
All right. Bye now.